All right, we should be live. Content. Come on. Live. All right, let me know in chat if you can see or hear me right now. There we go. I got lost in the YouTube dashboard for a second. Okay, so a couple of things have happened in last week, and the biggest one that I want to draw attention to is that the multi-select support has gotten way better. We'll go back to the crypto dashboard in a minute. So the first time that I did the implementation for multi-select, I kept the same dashboard, but made it so that it would still show a gauge, even though there were 20 gauges in this little space right here. And it was very unreadable and not very usable. I still wanted to have all the color coding so that way users could be like, oh, my frigate instance is taking up all the storage, or be able to catch like anomalies or things that are above thresholds. But it needed to be able to work well for all the hosts in my fleet or just one host, like so. So this has pretty colors, can tell you what's going on with one host or all the hosts. One thing I do need to add here is adding a no news is good news for some of the panels, I believe. So like this could be fine. And usually people will think like no data means that there's a bug here, but it could just be like this box has been on forever and network manager hasn't done anything because it's a DNS server. So yeah. Yeah, so that's the biggest change. This did apply to Docker as well. Docker I did had to take a couple of different cracks at, and now another thing that's I've been going back and doing is taking everything I've learned and applying it back to dashboards that I had previously. So in this one, all of the time series were just kind of all over the place, and that made it super hard to like action or like see what was happening or to see what an individual container was doing. So now everything is sorted, so you can see that ClamD is using the most memory out of all my containers, which is super useful to know. One issue that is kind of happening here is that there's some stuff, because I have to show the host name and the container, and this is a relatively large screen, it's still clipping the min and the max. So I'm not sure what's going to be the best solution for that, because you can have two identically named containers. So if you had like a mail cow for customer one and customer two, the container names would all be the same, so you wouldn't know the difference between customer one and customer two. So that's why that has to be there. Yeah. There's another bug. There is one issue. I shouldn't say a bug, but for older, there are some containers that aren't reporting CPU and memory usage, but overall this dashboard is in much better shape. And as I get like a bigger Windows environment, I could instrument this with, I'll bring the fix to Windows and more OpenSense and pfSense firewalls. I could expand that out to there. The reason why those haven't been implemented is the lack of ability to test it. I don't have multiple live firewalls in my house to test, so it's hard to test it. So the other thing that I've been spending a ton of time on recently, and that's the title of the stream, is focusing on allowing users to bring their own content and put it into their ShiftMon deployment. So this is why I had the crypto dashboard pulled up. I had to put a bunch of work into getting a Telegraf config that could scrape the CoinGecko API to get crypto pricing, made a pretty dashboard, and then I did a server migration, and I had deleted the old virtual machine before I had backed up the configuration. It wasn't stored in Git. At the time, my VM backup game was weak, and yes, you can restore things from backup, but it's better to define them in code so you can just plop the config back down as you deploy the new server. So the migration is less painful. So before we did have the ability to add in a dashboard and user alerts, but the one thing that was missing was having a Telegraf config. So the way that works, I'm going to show this using my Telegraf config, is you would have a file here, or in my GitLab repo, you'd have a file here for your alerts that would describe all of your alerts, and you can get that inside of Grafana by going into the alert rules, and then you would go under, I believe here, and you can click export rule group, copy the YAML, plop it in your code, or plop it in your repository, or if you don't have a Git repository, you can just have it as a YAML file on disk, but please make sure you're backing that up and think about learning how to use Git for that. And then inside of your ShiftMon inventory, I believe mine is inside of the ShiftMon config itself. User alerts. So I have user alerts.yaml defined here, and that's how I would get in, or that is how I would, by defining the grafana.alert path variable and pointing it to the user alerts, I'm able to populate all those alerts via code. So that way, if I do have to deploy a new server, or I need to do an audit trail to see like this alert broke, like this alert missed something in production and there was a recent change to it, I can go back through that audit trail, which is why using Git's better than using the just saving files on disk. And then the other component would be dashboard paths. So again, I have things defined, or I have content for those dashboards defined inside of the repository. I'm pointing Ansible at that, and then it will copy the dashboard in there so I can see all my crypto stuff and my Dendrite server matrix, because that's not included with the default deployment of ShiftMon. But the one thing that's missing is I can get alerts, I can get dashboards, but I couldn't define Telegraf configs. So now you can define inventory. So now I can define a Telegraf config. The reason why there's the .. / back into the repo itself is so that way I can test it locally. So I'll clone down the ShiftMon repo and then have the Ansible jobs repo cloned adjacently. So that's just a quirk of my machine, but excuse me. So I'll have the config path here. This is defined under a specific host, but you could define it globally for everything if you say, or in a group if you had like a bunch of Gitty servers, or you had a bunch of servers with the same metric type. I just, because of this is my home lab, I don't have like 50 servers that all have something outside of it in ShiftMon. If it was something that common that I'm deploying it multiple times in a small environment, I would just put it in the main project, but your mileage may vary. So now I can get the Telegraf config for the Stonks dashboard, so I can see how much money I'm losing in crypto, all deployed via code. And again, this could be metrics for a proprietary application or a custom application or something that isn't in ShiftMon and you want to work on it, and eventually we could get that added if you want to make that available. But for now, you can still manage everything as code. The user story I had in mind for this was you're not super into Ansible or infrastructure as code or anything like that, and ShiftMon's kind of your first foray into it. You get super into it, you read up on it and be like, well, I should do everything as code. It's like, okay, cool. Well, now I have all of this other stuff that I'm observing, like my line of business application or whatever thing that isn't in ShiftMon, whether that's because we haven't gotten around to it yet or it's specific to your company. And you can now, like after you find out that I'm supposed to do everything as code, not have to download more Ansible content or like have your Ansible run after it. It's all kind of in one centralized place. You just add some stuff to your variables and you're good to go. And there actually was a user, I'm going to call out Sleuth because he's an amazing contributor and community member who did have a repo that would do that. So he would deploy ShiftMon and then have a separate repo and Ansible role for deploying his custom content. Now that isn't needed and he can take advantage of this. So after that, if we want to deploy it, we can go to our CI pipeline or we can run it locally. Put in the role name, ShiftMon, and then that will deploy all the server components. And while that's deploying, I'm going to remove the Gitty config. So sudo cat. So we have a Gitty config. Gitty, I'm not sure how you're supposed to say it. And sorry, I keep smacking my desk with my mic. I tried putting in a gate last stream to help with that, but it just caused my talking because of the rise and fall on the gate. It would cause me to get cut off or you couldn't hear the first words I said. So we remove that config. And then the ShiftMon role won't deploy that because that's only on the server. This would be done in the Telegraf stage. So we'll go here. User alerts. Where is it? Add user provisioned alerts. Nothing was changed. Another thing we do have is recording rules. So that way users can define their own rules as well. Or I forget if that's in code yet. I'll have to look into that and get back to you. And if it's not in code, it will be by next stream. So now you can define all the major components inside of code that are not included in ShiftMon. So our server deployed, all of our alerts and dashboards that live outside of ShiftMon and the ones inside of ShiftMon have been deployed all in one role. And now if we want to do this for Telegraf, we just do role name, Telegraf in our pipeline. And this under the hood is running the ShiftMon Ansible role from Galaxy. And then we can do some watch magic. Etsy, telegraf.d/gitty.conf. And right now you see there's no such file and directory. Please say it's actually, okay, good, it's actually connecting. So we'll watch the pipeline on this screen, and eventually you'll see the configuration repopulate. Or we'll find a bug live on stream. Almost there. The one downside to having a ton of integrations with ShiftMon is it can be lengthy because you have to check to see if the integration applies. That was one nice thing about NixOS. I've been dabbling with that. The TOML generator in NixOS makes deploying Telegraf very problematic, but it was nice that it seemed fairly time consistent if you were just doing a deploy. Or if you were just doing a minor change. And then still haven't gotten there. One more stream improvement I've made is why? Oh, I'm getting permission denied. That's why. So the role ran successfully. I should have read that. Now we have the configuration back. So that way, if I do decide to like reinstall ShiftMon, all of my content comes with me. And that's, to me, I think is a very powerful feature. So the next thing I want to focus on is using the secret store functionality in Telegraf. I am going to show secrets on stream, but immediately after I'm done, I'm going to wipe that, or like rekey that secret or update it, however you want to say it. So fair warning. I don't know if I need to do a trigger warning or it's just to like preempt all the comments. So right now, let's see, defaults. I should do a sudo ls lah. So right now, I can't type my password. Right now, Telegraf stores user credentials in a file that is only readable by the Telegraf user group. But the problem is, like, I'm not the Telegraf user or root, and I can see this secret. Like, it's not hard for me to get at. And Telegraf does have a solution for this, and it's to use the OS secret store. So they have this really nice blog post over here that explains the nope, it doesn't support dark mode, or I can't find the button. It doesn't support dark mode, and the blog describes how they have different ways of fetching secrets. So they have a Docker plugin. They have you can query an HTTP endpoint and get it back as JSON. They have Jose, which stores it as encrypted JSON, but it requires user interaction to unlock. And the one I'm mostly focused on is the operating system one. So you can use the Linux kernel keyring to store secrets there and fetch them, and that's a little more secure than storing them in a restricted file in the operating system. For now, this is only going to be in Linux. The reason why is doing this on Windows is extremely difficult. So on Windows, unless you use Debian, you can just use sudo-u to run commands as another user. But if the Ansible user and the user installing Telegraf are different, you need to find a way to run the Telegraf secrets command as that user, or access the operating system secret store as if you were that user. Linux has sudo for everything but Debian, and then on Debian I was reading earlier, it's like run as user, something like that, run user. But I need to see if that is on Debian before I try going that route. The other downside of the way I'm doing it right now is I'm going to be using the Ansible command module to do it, because I'm not aware of a Telegraf module that already exists that does it. The upside, though, is all the commands are idempotent. So if you run the Telegraf set secret command multiple times, it won't have any negative side effects. It'll just update the secret if it's there or not. Okay, perfect. So it looks like it has run user support. So I think I have to do it as run user because that's going to be the most ubiquitous. Instead of sudo-u, the only issue I could see happening is like you're going to run into weird user edge cases with this. So if the user installing Telegraf can't impersonate Telegraf using run as user, that could cause problems. But I have tested it locally on my machine, just like manually inputting the secrets and editing the telegraf.conf, and it wasn't too bad. And the changes are fairly minor too. So if I go sudo cat etsy telegraf telegraf.com. And then if we go to secret stores, we're going to go into the secretstore.os for ShiftMon, and we're going to copy everything down to the outputs. So for now, this will only cover the outputs. I would like to have it work like environment variables where users can define them. And I will need to clear up some of the syntax in the variable names because I said user secrets, but it's a well-protected file, which I don't feel has the same level of, doesn't have the same connotation as secret. So let's go in here. So let's go in here, and we need to go into defaults, the telegraf.conf file, and I believe it is this guy. Yeah, I don't have GitLens here. I use GitLabs or GitLens on my other machine, and I'm used to Blame showing up to show me when things changed. So it was a little confusing to not, like, I was going to see if this was the right config because there might be a little bit of a mess I need to clean up in here. So we have, this is saying, hey, this is the secret store we would like to use. It's the OS secret store. It's called ShiftMon. I think, I forget it which way it goes, but the ID is how Telegraf is aware of it. And then the key ring is how the operating system is. So I name it the same because it's hard to keep that straight in my head. So I just name them the same thing so I don't have to think about it. But if they were different, one would be for how Telegraf would access that secret, and one is how it will show up in the operating system. And then instead of using the, so if this was a, environment variable like it is now, this is the old way, where you put a $ in front of something inside of an interpreted string. It'll show up like that. The new way is at curly brace secret store : secret name. So this is saying inside of the ShiftMon keyring, look at, this is the Victoria user. So now the fun part, this is a small minor configuration change. And this is where Ansible needing to do stuff in order matters, because if you need to, this matters because if you don't have a Telegraf config with the secret store defined in it, you can't run the secret store commands. So if I go up, if I go up in my history, or is this where VS Code and my terminal having different histories is going to be a pain in the butt? Yeah. So if I run this command in my terminal as me, this will not show up inside of Telegraf when I go to run it as root or the Telegraf user. So this is the command you're going to run it. So there's nothing in secrets.conf. It's a file that doesn't exist. That's the telegraf.conf. But if I run it here, what? My Telegraf config is invalid toml syntax. Oh, it's because of the environment variable. Oh, is that gonna be? Oh God. Okay. So I think what I'm gonna end up doing then. So to explain better what's going on here, head etsy telegraf.com. So what's happening here is when the Telegraf secret command goes to read the telegraf.conf, it's freaking out because it can't perform this lookup because it doesn't get the context of Etsy default Telegraf. So what I'll need to do is put the secret store somewhere else, or the secret store config somewhere else, in order to avoid the secrets from getting overwritten. So so I'm going to cut this here. And then I'm going to make a new file. Call it secrets.conf. And then to test this locally, I'm going to go sudo nvim etsy telegraf.d secrets.conf. Perfect. I don't know if secrets is like isolated enough of a namespace. If I should do like ShiftMon secrets or like ShiftMonSecretStore.conf or something. Like, I am fairly certain no one else is gonna name this, because secrets is like a common English word. But if I do telegraf.d ShiftMon secret store.conf, that's like no one's gonna name. I really hope somebody doesn't name that. Make sure our secret store command still works. Hey, Bam. What's the angry face for? Is it the live typing, or I'm plopping my password all over the screen? If it's the password over the screen, everything's on a LAN, and I'm rekeying it right after stream. And I'll work on audio for the next stream, and I'll try to be less angry of a typer. I might bust out like a crappy keyboard, like a crappy quiet keyboard for the next stream. What did I move you to? Copy. There we go. I think I had it defined. Did I? No. Anyway, so now inside of Ansible, there's some cleanup work we need to do. So Telegraf, we need to be able to deal with the user being able to be Telegraf root or anything the user defines. So right now, by default, Telegraf will run as the Telegraf user, and it gets created. That user is created locally when Telegraf is installed. The other thing that can happen is if you set Telegraf underscore root to true, what it will do is run Telegraf as root. That's a lazy way of dealing with permissions. So if you have something like we have IPVS support, instead of dealing with the capabilities and whether or not your OS supports that, you could just set Telegraf to run as root and it'll collect the IPVS metrics. There's an obvious security risk there because Telegraf can execute commands and it executes them as the Telegraf user. Telegraf is running as root. Telegraf's running scripts. If you could like copy a script in place, there's a security risk there, but it's a user tunable thing and it's up for them to decide. So now for secrets, by default, we are going to define the existing Victoria Metrics user and Victoria Metrics password that we were already requiring people to use. And then we're going to iterate over that dictionary so that way we can just do it all in one play. And then the default Telegraf user is going to either be root if Telegraf root is true. By default, it is set to false. And then otherwise, it's going to be Telegraf. And then it is noted here that, like, hey, this is here for technical debt reasons. Because we were just allowing people to set a variable and set Telegraf as root. I should have, I'm kicking myself for this now. I should have made it so that Telegraf user was something you could set. So then when I get to this point, setting Telegraf secrets, I wouldn't have to have hacky stuff like this in my code, but here we are. So now we are going to set to run as non-default user. And then this is going to use the template function. This is in files, so this will need to get taken over to templates. Then this will notify restarting Telegraf because it's a configuration change. What was the other change? Is it Telegraf _ secrets? Yep, here's the other change. So now we need to change, I said the word change a lot just now. We need to say, hey, use this file, and we will also need to upload the Telegraf secrets config name, add secret store config, and this is Ansible built-in .file or copy not file. I already got bit by that earlier today. Source dest is going to be Etsy Telegraf. I have this copied. And this is going to be ShiftMon secretstore.conf. Come true. Oh no. I just found something else that's gonna make running all this difficult. This shows up a couple of times. Just a couple 2tree32 times. We're going to have to replace the owner to be the Telegraf user. It should just be a simple find and replace, but we'll see about that. All right, so we're going to add the secret store config, and then we're going to do become true. And then we need to set the owner to be Telegraf _ user. I guess we only need to change the leaving the group as Telegraf should be fine. I can't see an issue with that, but I'm silly. So group is going to still be Telegraf. Ansible built-in copy, and I need to set the mode. One common thing I've gotten bitten by more times than I want to admit is setting a mode to an integer, because I always think about the octal permissions as 660 or 660. I don't think about them as a string, but if Ansible gets goofy if you only interpret it as or if you don't have it defined as a string. So if you define it as an integer like that, it'll do weird things to file permissions. So make sure you quote those. We have become true multiple times, which we don't need. So we'll want to become root. Or I guess we could avoid. We might be able to use Ansible primitives for this instead of sudo u or run user. Ansible run as user. So Ansible does have the ability to change. It's like Ansible become user. Set to user with desired privileges, the username you become, not the user you are logged. Okay. So this is what I want to do. I need to do become user and then become the Telegraf user for this play. I don't know how the no login thing will work with that, but we shall see. So this guy should be become underscore user. I don't know if you have to do become true with that, but we'll see. So now everything, it's the telegraf.conf set. I don't think it is. Can go to get telegraf.conf. Perfect. Get rid of that. No. Okay, so now we should be able to get that figured out. So if we do Ansible telegraf.yaml, and then we want to limit this to Zoe. One thing I will need to do. Oh yeah, Zoe's not in that inventory. Crud. I'll finish this off stream. I need to go rekey those passwords. Yeah, it's been great streaming with you. I hope you guys enjoy the ability to add your own user content to ShiftMon. and look forward to hearing from you in Matrix. All of our stuff's in the doobly doo. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day.